Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Today we will be starting with the dental composites or the composite resins. So the learning outcomes of this lecture would be to define what are composites, their constituents and associated properties and functions, classifying the composite according to the filler particle size as well as the curing technique, explaining the steps of composite fillings and its manipulation, and understanding the mechanism of polymerization, shrinkage, and techniques that may be used to minimize it. So starting with the definition, what is a composite? So a material with two or more distinct phases, and a dental composite is a highly cross-linked polymeric material reinforced by dispersion of fillers bonded to the resin matrix by silane coupling agents. So basically the red bold words are actually giving an idea of what a dental composite is composed of. So there are basically three phases: the filler, the silane coupling agent, and the polymeric material. And this microscopic picture is basically showing what a dental composite looks like. Now let's move on to the clinical applications of dental composites. Because they are direct restorative materials or filling materials, they may be used in class 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 cavities. They have been used as preventive restorations in pit and fissure sealants, as luting agents in the form of resin cements, for core buildup, for indirect restorations, for repair, and wherever there are aesthetic enhancements like veneers, diastema closures, and etc. So let's move on to the components of a composite restorative material. So firstly we have the matrix, which is a plastic resin material that forms a continuous phase and binds the filler particle. And the different resin matrices are BIS GMA, UDMA, TEC DMA. So these are all dental monomers. Then you have the fillers. They are the reinforcing particles and or fibers that are dispersed within the matrix. And example includes silica, titania, zirconia, and quartz. And then finally the coupling agent, which basically promotes adhesion between the filler and the resin matrix. Let's look at the general composition. So the general composition is what you are always asked to write in your exam, and that is why you should mention all the components. So as we mentioned, the resin matrix with BIS GMA or urethane dimethacrylate, then fillers, then the coupling agent, then the inhibitor, which is hydroquinone. The inhibitor obviously is added to prevent premature polymerization and to give some control over the setting. Then UV absorbers to improve the color stability, opacifiers like titanium dioxide and aluminium oxide, and color pigments to match the tooth color. So these are all these last three components are basically added to enhance the aesthetics and make them more natural and tooth-like in appearance. This is a diagrammatic representation of the filler and the resin matrix and the coupling agent or the silane coupling agent. So you have the organic matrix, which is the yellow part, the white large uh, basically large particles represent the fillers, which are the dispersed phase. And then you have the coupling agent or the coupling phase, which is basically bonding them or basically joining them together. And then you have the other additives like the coloring additives, the radio pacifiers, the inhibitors, the ultraviolet stabilizers. So basically this is what the dental composite is composed of. Now let's look at all these components individually. The resin matrix, as we talked about, are monomers that may be aromatic or aliphatic, which means they may be ring containing, they may be straight chain, they may be branched. And then, as we mentioned, BIS GMA, this is the most popular and commonly used dental monomer. And BIS GMA stands for bisphenol A glycidyl methacrylate. Then you have urethane dimethacrylate or UDMA. It may be used in place of BIS GMA. And then we have the TEC DMA, which is triethylene glycol dimethacrylate. This is added to decrease the viscosity of BIS GMA. So the resin matrix may be composed of BIS GMA and TEC DMA or simply just urethane dimethacrylate or UDMA. These are the chemical structures. You will never be asked to draw them, but just for a general idea, as you can see, this DMA is an aromatic compound. Then you have UDMA and TEC-DMA. And what is the function of these monomers? To bind the filler particles together. They provide the workability, and they're typical monomers and basically contribute to the general properties of composites. Now let's talk about bis-DMA. It is extremely viscous due to the large benzene rings, and that is why we add TEC-DMA to decrease the viscosity, make it more workable, and it is known as a diluent, to dilute it basically. So that is what it does. It makes it freely movable, increases the polymer conversion, increases cross-linkage, and decreases overall shrinkage. So these are basically the effects of adding TEC-DMA. The advantage is that firstly, obviously, it's making it less viscous and easy to work with, and increasing the polymerization conversion and the shrinkage, and increases the cross-linkage. Disadvantages of bis-DMA. As we mentioned, it is highly viscous. It is difficult to synthesize it in pure composition. It has a strong air inhibition to polymerization, which means that if it absorbs oxygen, polymerization may be inhibited. It has a high water sorption, that is the tendency to absorb water. Polymerization shrinkage is present, and it does not bond to the tooth structure directly. It requires etching and a bonding agent. As we studied in the previous lectures, that composites cannot bond directly to tooth. They require the tooth to be etched and a bonding agent to be applied, formation of a hybrid layer, and then only can the composite be applied. So diluent monomer or TEC-DMA is added to decrease the viscosity, and by that becomes more workable. Diluents used are TEC-DMA, and then by that way more fillers can be incorporated. It allows cross-linking between chains and reduces the water sorption. Polymerization shrinkage is reduced. So after the resin matrix, let's move to the filler particles. The filler particles, as we mentioned, are basically fibers or particles dispersed within the resin matrix. And the main advantage or function of the fillers is to reduce the polymerization shrinkage. They also reduce the water sorption and coefficient of thermal expansion, which bis-DMA actually contributes to. Bis-DMA, as we saw in the previous slide, increases water sorption, coefficient of thermal expansion. So what the filler particles are doing, they are counteracting or combating all the disadvantages of the resin matrix. And at the same time, it improves the mechanical properties like the compressive strength, the tensile strength, the modulus of elasticity, hardness, and abrasion resistance. So the filler particles are basically the main reinforcing particles that enhance the properties, the shrinkage. They decrease the shrinkage, they reduce the water sorption and coefficient of thermal expansion, and enhance the properties like mechanical properties. Example of filler particles are silica, quartz, titania, zirconia, etc. So this is a very important question, comes in your exam, that what is the role of filler particles in composites? Other advantages are that again the reduction in water sorption, softening and staining, and increased radio opacity and diagnostic sensitivity. So fillers basically, because they may be heavy metals, they increase the radio opacity and make it easier to you can say diagnose and see basically on the radiograph where the filling is present. So they increase the fillers and increase the mechanical properties, the strength, abrasion, aesthetics, and handling. All of this is enhanced. And they're usually present in 50 to 86% by weight and 35 to 71% by volume. This is basically a graph that shows with the increasing filler volume, the fracture toughness is increased. So again, this is basically contributing to the mechanical properties. Factors affecting the filler content. Now, what is the filler content dependent on? Amount of filler added, size of particles and its distribution, index of diffraction, which as you know is an optical property, radio opacity, and the hardness. So let's discuss the different types of fillers in dental composites. First of all, we will discuss the quartz fillers. Individually, quartz filler. So basically, they're mainly used in conventional composites. They're chemically inert and hard to and difficult to polish, and they have a major drawback that they cause abrasion of opposite teeth and restoration. As you can appreciate from the picture, you can see that the particles appear very rough and irregular, and so that is why they are hard and difficult to polish and cause abrasion of opposing tooth or the rest. Then we have colloidal silica. These are known as microfillers. They are added in very small amounts to modify the viscosity. They have a large surface area, and they are basically the inorganic fillers. Then the glasses or ceramics containing heavy metals, they are the best to provide radio opacity to the resin. Refractive index is 1.5, almost close to tooth. Examples are glasses of barium, zirconium, strontium, etc. So this is a summary of the three fillers we discussed. Quartz, the advantages are that it is inert, strong and hard, but difficult to grind into very fine particles. It has good aesthetics and it has adequate refractive index. However, the drawback is that it is difficult to polish and potentially abrasive to the opposing teeth or restorations. In case of amorphous silica, the same composition and refractive index as quartz. However, a drawback is that it is less hard and not crystalline enough. Now, the glass fillers with heavy metals like titania, zirconia, they have adequate refractive index but provide radio opacity. So this is an added advantage in glass fillers. Drawbacks are that they are not inert as quartz and amorphous silica, leach and weaken in acidic juices and oral fluids. So that means they're not stable within the oral environment. More susceptible to wear, shorter functional lifetime, attacked by acidulated phosphoric fluoride gels and solutions. So these are basically fluoride solutions. So these are the drawbacks of glass fillers. Now the third component, which is very important because it binds both the filler particles to the resin matrix, that is the inorganic and the organic component of dental composites, it is the coupling agent. So the function of the coupling agent is to improve the physical and mechanical properties of resins. It does so by reducing the water sorption by preventing water from penetrating within the filler resin interface. And it is a bifunctional molecule. So the as you can see below, the chemical structure is given. So the silicon group, the siloxane group, bonds to the hydroxyl group of the filler on the right, and the methacrylate group bonds to the resin, which is the BisGM in this case, on the left. And in dentistry, the common silane coupling agent are basically organosilanes, specifically 3-methyloxypropyl trimethoxysilane, also known as MPS. Then obviously we have to add inhibitors. This is done to increase the shelf life of the material and prevent any kind of autopolymerization or pre-polymerization of the monomer in a chemically cured resin as well as a light cured resin. And the common inhibitor is usually hydroquinone. In the light cured composite, polymerization and hardening of the resin on exposure to light may occur during dispensing and operatory light. The light of your dental unit, if it's on when you're doing the filling, the composite filling, the polymerization may take place, and so that is why inhibitors are added. So as I mentioned, the common inhibitor is hydroquinone. Other inhibitors also may be present, like 4-methoxyphenol and 2,4,6 tertiary-butylphenol. But the most common one is hydroquinone. We have the fluorescence compounds, the metal oxides, they enhance the aesthetics of the restoration. Then the pigments, usually metal oxides, reproduce the colors of composites. The dental composites are available in various shades in order to match and simulate the natural teeth. Then optical modifiers for visual shading to add translucency or opacity, for example, titanium dioxide or aluminum dioxide. Then coloring agents like aluminum oxide and titanium oxide, which are 0.001 to 0.007% by weight. Shade, translucency, and opacity should simulate the enamel and dainty. So basically, all of these additives are added in order to enhance the aesthetics and make them more natural and tooth-like in appearance. So we've discussed the composition of dental composites. Now let's move on to the classification of composites. They can be classified by many ways based on the curing mechanism. So they may be chemically cured or chemically activated or light activated. And by light activated, basically there are two mechanisms: UV light activated or visible light activated. So now let's look at the self-cured or the chemically activated resins. In the composition, the base paste, it's basically composed of two pastes, the base paste and the catalyst paste, which we mix together. So the base paste contains a benzoyl peroxide initiator with the bis GMA resin matrix, and the second paste or the catalyst paste contains a tertiary amine activator. So when the two bases are mixed together, the initiator and resin matrix, they react with the activator, and a free radical polymerization reaction takes place. And this is basically the beginning of the polymerization. Now, the light activated systems, basically two types of systems: the UV light activated systems and the visible light activated system. So now the UV light activated system was discontinued because of various disadvantages like lack of penetration to the tooth structure and lack of depth of cure. And the recent system is basically the visible light activated resin, and this is basically a single paste system. So there's just one single paste, unlike the self cure where there are two pastes. And this contains a photo initiator because it's being cured by light, and that is camphoroquinone 0.25% by weight, and an amine accelerator which is diaminoethyl methacrylate. So basically this is the difference between the light activated and the chemical activated, the difference in the initiator, the accelerator, and the fact that this is a single paste system, unlike the chemically activated which is a two paste system. Now there are different light sources by which we can cure the composite, like halogen lights, quartz, tungsten halogen, plasma arc, LED, and argon laser. Now let's move on to the polymerization reaction. So, when basically we are talking about the light activated system, so when exposed to a light of correct wavelength, the photoinitiator camphoroquinone is activated and reacts with the amine to form the free radical. So basically, whenever we apply the correct wave light of the correct wavelength, the photo initiator camphoroquinone is activated, and it reacts with the activator basically, which is an amine, to form free radicals, and from then on forth the polymerization reaction starts taking place. Now it has been studied that camphoroquinone has an absorption range between 400 to 500. So this is basically the wavelength of which which it is sensitive to, and this is basically the blue region of the visible light spectrum. And the our visible light activation usually takes place by use of this blue light. So camphoroquinone is the most common photoinitiator. It has a tendency to absorb blue light, and it is activated in the 400 to 500 nanometer range. Initiator reacts with the amine activator. Free radicals are formed, and this initiates the addition polymerization. Now let's very briefly discuss the different curing lamps or light sources for curing dental composites. So curing lamps are the handheld devices which contain the light sources and have a rigid light guide made up of fused optical fibers. The most widely used light source is a quartz bulb with tungsten filament, and it's called basically quartz tungsten halogen lamp. And other types of lamps are LEDs. Well, LEDs are becoming very popular. They're cordless and they have various advantages compared to the conventional quartz tungsten halogen lamps. Then you have the plasma arc curing lamps and argon laser lamps. So these are the types of curing lamps available. and they have their own advantages, disadvantages, and again, it's basically a matter of personal preference which the dentist uses. Now, the total amount of resin polymerized depends on various factors or the degree of conversion, the depth of cure, the amount of activator present, the time of exposure, and the polymerization shrinkage, which has been reported to be about 1 to 7%. So this is also known as the degree of polymerization or the amount of resin that is polymerized. Now, this is a pictorial representation of the degree of polymerization. As you can see on the right, the depth of cure, or basically how deep you're going into the cavity, is basically a major factor for the degree of conversion. So initially, up till 1 millimeter, you can say that the degree of conversion or the amount of polymerization is 65%. Then moving on deeper, it decreases to 45, and then at about even lower than 4 millimeter, it decreases to 15%. So this is a very important factor, so, and that is why it is advocated that we use an incremental technique. We don't fill up the cavity up to 4 millimeters or 5 millimeters right away. We place increments, ideally in of 1 millimeter, and then we cure it one by one and step by step and layer by layer to get the best properties and to minimize the shrinkage and increase the depth degree of conversion at the same time. So now let's talk about polymerization shrinkage. Polymerization shrinkage, as you know, is a phenomena that is present in polymers, and when the polymerization reaction is taking place, there is an overall shrinkage or change in the dimension as basically the monomer is converted into the polymer. Now, shrinkage causes incorporation of stresses. It can lead to micro leakage. It can cause fracture of enamel adjacent to the area of the shrinkage. And as we saw that fillers, that is basically the function of the fillers to reduce the shrinkage. And high shrinkage is noted in the microfilled resins. So we'll be talking about the different composites based on their filler content. Polymerization shrinkage plays a significant role in the restoration failure. If we talk about the causes for composite failure, one of the major reasons is for polymerization shrinkage. It leads to gap formation because obviously the filling shrinks away from the margins. Secondary caries may form, marginal leakage because obviously due to the accumulation of fluids and food and bacteria in the margins or the gap, and then postoperative sensitivity. Now, how to counteract the polymerization shrinkage? There are various clinical techniques, but we can use a highly filled composite, that is, composites with high filler content, low shrinkage composites, incremental placement, and light curing from the margins. So, these are all clinical steps we will be discussing later on. So, these are the effects of polymerization shrinkage, and this diagram just basically summarizes what we just discussed, that it leads to marginal staining, micro leakage, enamel crack, postoperative sensitivity, and internal gaps, and ultimately secondary caries and failure of the restoration. So how can we prevent polymerization shrinkage? As we saw in amalgam, that the first and the foremost important step in preventing failure or any kind of clinical clinical failure, basically we our cavity preparation and configuration should be the best. So we prepare the cavity as such to relieve the stresses that can lead to shrinkage, and then we do the incremental addition technique, which means that we don't apply the composite in a bulk. We apply it incrementally. We apply one layer, we cure it, and then we apply the second and the third and the fourth and so on forth. So this is known as the incremental technique, where the composite is added in layers. Light curing is done towards the cervical margin, not the center of the tooth or the filling, because it is seen that the composite cures towards light. So if we direct the light towards the cervical margins, the composite will move or cure towards the margins, and there won't be any chances of any kind of gaps. Use of indirect restoration, where most of the shrinkage occurs outside and the restoration is cemented intraorally. If we make an indirect restoration in the lab, and all the shrinkage will have occurred by then, so we can actually modify it and place it in the tooth later on. Use of liners under filling. So if we use a liner, if there is any shrinkage and there are any gap formations, the liner will compensate for it. Composite with high filler content and loading. So again, we use the composite, we select a composite which has a high filler content, and there are newer low shrink composites in which in place of this TMA there are other compounds, so we can also go for that. So these are about 6 to 7 steps that you can carry out to prevent or eliminate, not eliminate, but prevent or minimize polymerization shrinkage. This is a very important question. This is a pictorial representation of the different ways we can prevent polymerization shrinkage. The first diagram shows what we discussed, the incremental build-up technique. These numbers are basically the number of increments. We have placed about 6 increments and the direction in which they are placed. So that is the recommended technique of basically doing composite filling in increments. Then the second diagram shows the curing light. As you can see, the direction is towards the cervical margin, and the composite is also curing or moving towards the curing light, and that is the recommended method, that we direct the curing light towards the cervical margins. And then this diagram shows the factors for polymerization shrinkage, the influencing factors. Opacity of the composite resin, filler content, as we mentioned, the higher the filler content, the lesser the shrinkage, the cavity configuration or design, the intensity of the light, the type of the resin monomer, curing characteristics of the composite resin, and the elastic modulus of the material. So let's look at the difference between light and chemically activated resins. Again, this is also an important UQ. So the light activated resins, they are single paste. The chemically activated resins are two paste. Light activated resins have no risk of air entrapment. Chemically activated resins, because you are mixing the two pastes together manually, there are chances that air may get entrapped, and this will definitely affect the setting reaction. Now, in light activated resins, you have command on the polymerization. That means it is in your hand when you start it, and you can control it. Whereas in the chemically activated resin, you have no control over the setting. It starts as soon as you start mixing. Now, light activated resins shrink towards the light source, whereas the chemically activated resins shrink towards the center or the bulk of the material. Light activated resins require a light source for the curing, and chemically activated require mixing of the two pastes only. So these are the major differences between light activated and activated composites. Now let's move on to the types of composites or the classification according to the filler content. So we've discussed the classification according to the curing method, which is basically where two types, the chemically activated resins and the light activated. So this diagram shows how composites can be classified or based on the filler size. So basically, macrofilled, microfilled, hybrid, and nanohybrid. You can see the filler sizes as well, and from the diagram you can see the sizes that they are getting reduced as we go on further. And then the nanohybrid, which are the latest resin composites, the filler size is 20 nanometers to about 1400 nanometers. So let's look at this classification, which is according to the filler size. So we have the conventional or the macrofill composites. The filler size is 1 to 15 microns. Microfill, which have 0.04 microns of silica. Hybrid composites, which are a mixture of the conventional and the microfill. So they have 1 to 20 micron glass and 0.04 micron of silica. Hybrid composites, basically there are many types of hybrid composites like mini fill, midi fill, small particle fill, packable, and flowable. And the recent composites are the nano filled and smart composites. So this is a simpler classification. So let's look at the macro filled or the conventional composites. These are the oldest composites, and the size range of the fillers, which include glasses and quartz, was from 1 to 50 microns, and they are basically occupy up to 75% of the filler loading. And the application is mainly in stress bearing areas of the mouth, like the class 1 and class 2 cavities. Properties were that they have excellent strength, however, they were rough, difficult to polish, and they had low coefficient of thermal expansion. The next are the microfill composites. As the name suggests, that the filler content was less and the filler size was also small. The homogeneous microfill contained 0.04 micron silica, and they were only used in low stress and subgingival areas. What they lacked in mechanical properties, they made up for in their aesthetics. They have high luster and polish. Then the heterogeneous microfill, along with 0.05 micron silica, they also contain pre-polymerized resin, and they have better wear resistance and lower shrinkage. Then the hybrid composites, about 1 to 8 micron glass filler particles plus 0.04 microns of silica. So they're basically hybrid, which means a combination of two or more other components. 75 to 80% by weight, better physical and mechanical properties, obviously because they we have combined two filler particles of different composition and properties, so the overall properties have improved. Used in class 1 to class 5 restoration, so this means they can be used in all of the five restorations easily. Now, types of hybrid, they are further divided into large particle fill composites, so as the name suggests, because they're large particle. So the filler size is 1 to 20 micron glass, 0.04 micron silica. High stress bearing areas, as we mentioned in the previous slide, class 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Better coefficient of thermal expansion, strength, and aesthetics. So the drawbacks of the conventional or the macro filled uh, are basically overcome in this type of composite, where you have the strength as well as the aesthetics, and coefficient of thermal expansion is also improved. Then moving on to the smaller composites of the hybrid composites type are the midi filled 0.12 10 micron glass and 0.04 micron silica. These are used in the high stress bearing areas with optimal polishing, so where we want aesthetics and polishing, like class 3 and 5. So there is also high stress, so we can use them there. However, compared to the previous composites, they have less strength but better physical properties than the midi filled composites. Then the small particle composites, zero point 0.1, zero point 0.1 to 2 micron glass and 0.04 micron silica. Now they have translucency, polishability, and surface finish is very good, which means that they lead in terms of the aesthetics. However, they can only be used in low stress bearing areas with optimal polishability. So the areas which are low stress bearing areas, which where the masticatory forces are less, for example the interiors, and you need excellent aesthetics or polishability, we can use the small particle fill composite. So these all basically are the types of the hybrid composite. Then the packable composites, as the name suggests, they are basically one of their application is basically to be packed into the cavity. These are light activated resin with porous fibers and textured fillers. So over here we don't just have fillers, we have fibers as well, as long as 100 microns. So they're packable and condensable because of the fact that they have so much filler and fiber. The viscosity is very high, and that is why they're packable and condensable, just like amalgam, and they can easily be used in class 1 and class 2. They show low wear, low shrinkage, and they have a high depth of cure. As we saw in the picture, that the depth of cure decreases the with increasing depth, and the degree of conversion decreases with the depth. But however, in the packable composites, this is not the case. They have a high depth of. These are the new recent advances. So let's talk about packable composites. Just as have a look, as we discussed in the earlier slides. So uh, it has high viscosity, so better proximal contacts, but has to be handled like amalgam. And there's an alteration of filler shape, size, particle distribution. But the resin chemistry and filler. Then the flowable composites, we can say they are the opposite of packable composites, where they have low viscosity and the filler content is low, and they're usually used in class 5 pediatric restorations, low stress bearing areas, because they have less filler content, zero point 0.4 to 3 micron fillers with only 42 to 53% loading. So they have high shrinkage because obviously the filler content is low, low modulus of elasticity and low resistance. So high shrinkage and inferior mechanical properties. The same. Then the flowable composites, they were used for fissure sealants in type 1, 3 and 5 class filling. Could be also used as a liner. The particle size is similar to hybrid composites. Inferior mechanical properties because again the filler content is low and that also reduces the viscosity. Flowable were used in preventive resin restorations like fissure sealants, in small class 5 restoration, for provisional repair, for composite repairs, and now the other classification, which is the newer classification, is based on the particle size. So according to the particle size, composite may be classified as macrofilled, in which the size is about 10 to 100 microns, midi-filled, which is 1 to 10 microns, mini-filled 0.1 to 1 micron, microfilled 0.01 to zero point 0.1 micron, and nanofilled 0.005 to 0.01 microns. And you can see from the diagram on the right that these are represented by basically this is showing the filler sizes and their shape as well. Now you can see that from macro to nano the size is decreasing considerably as we are going into the nanoscale. So they've compared in this slide the size of the fillers to everyday objects. Like the midi fill is basically the sizes of a beach ball, and a nanofill 0.02 micrometer is the size of a pea. So now the newer composites are the nanofilled or the nanohybrid. Nanofills are nanometer sized particles throughout matrix, and nanohybrid are basically, as the name suggests, hybrid. So they're also nanometer size, but then there is more than one filler present. So it may be a fiber or it may be another kind of filler with a different composition and size. The size is, however, the same. It is in the nanoscale. So let's just summarize the properties of composites. So looking at the traditional or the conventional or the microfill, the compressive strength is about 250 to 300. The same is the case with microfill. However, it is the highest in the small particle composites, and the hybrid falls between the conventional and the small particle. Then the tensile strength shows the same pattern. Elastic modulus or the stiffness, again, it is the least for the microfill. It is satisfactory for traditional, however, it is the greatest in the small particle. And again, the hybrid falls in between the both. The coefficient of thermal expansion. Basically, coefficient of thermal expansion, if you can see that it's basically the highest in the microfill because of the low filler content, and the Knoop hardness is greatest or basically in the small particle in hybrid it's more or less the same. It is the least in microfilled, and the traditional or the conventional composites also have the hardness is sufficient. So we've discussed all the composites, the filler, their classification, their properties, and their applications. Now let's move on to the biological aspect, the biocompatibility. So important thing is that it is well tolerated by pulp and forms a good seal. Rare allergic reactions, as with all materials, may occur. For example, HEMA. Cytotoxicity is short-lived and not a chronic source. Degree of cure is important, so it's important that the maximum degree of conversion takes place. So the free monomer is less in it is present in lesser amounts. Some studies stated that there were some estrogenic effects in the cell cultures because of the BIS GMA. However, again, the better improved composites actually overcome came these problems. So basically, it has no biocompatibility issues other than the if it can cause allergic reactions in some people. Now, the recent advances or the recent composites include the nanocomposite, which we already discussed. So they are in the range of 0.0002 nanometers to 0.075, and usually are composed of silica and zirconia. And the and they have the best properties of least shrinkage, better modulus of elasticity, better mechanical strength, and high translucency. So they are offering both mechanical and good physical properties as well as aesthetics. Then the smart composites. So smart composites, they can release ions to neutralize the acidic environment. They have anti-carcinogenic or anti-caries properties. Then the low shrink composites, so they basically do not contain bis GMA. They have silurane, which are basically, you can say, ring like basically structures that are based on the epoxy group, and they expand on setting. So they do not go shrinkage, they expand. Now, the further other kinds of composites that have come into the market, like the gyomers, which is basically a mixture of composites and GIC, so that we get the advantage of both and minimize the limitation of each. So they are the newly introduced hybrid aesthetic restoration for dental restorative therapy. They are based on the pre-reached glass ionomer technology. So basically, they consist of fluoroaluminosilicate glass, which has been reacted with polyalkanoic acid in water prior to inclusion in the silica-filled urethane resin. So basically, the GIC glass particles have already been reacted with the polyalkanoic acid, and then they are introduced into the filler of urethane resin. So gyomers contain both of the essential components of GIC and resin, but they cannot be classified as compomers. So basically, you can say they are a kind of basically composite, a hybrid of composites. And we won't go into the detail of the gyomers. You should just know the name and have a basic idea what they are. And they can be used in dentine, adhesive system, fissure sealants, and as restorative materials for non-loaded bearing areas. Because again, they are limited to just low stress areas. You cannot use them in all the different cavities. Then we have the armosers. So in this case, the armosers or the organically modified ceramics are a hybrid of basically ceramics and composites. So they mix the organic and inorganic components at a nanoscopic scale, and they have been developed as an alternate to the dimethacrylate based composites. And they basically, the chemical structure is based on organically modified alkosides and, and functionalized organic oligomers or the. So again, this is a table that summarizes the different advantages, disadvantages, along with the type of composites and the application. So let's have a look at the microfill. So this table is good enough if you want to remember the classification and the advantages, disadvantages, and application. It's everything basically summarized in a table. The microfill, the size of the filler particle is 0.4 to 0.75 micrometer. It can be used in class 1, 2, 3, and 5. Advantages: good aesthetics, good finish, and gloss. Continued smoothness. The smoothness and gloss is retained over time. The disadvantages is that it lacks strength and has high shrinkage. Hybrid. So basically, the size of filler particles is zero point 0.2 to 3 micrometer. It can be used in from class 1 to class 5 cavities. Good aesthetics as well as strength. But the disadvantage is that over time it tends to lose the smoothness. Then the nanofill 0.01 to 0.0015 micrometer, again used for class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Best polish, low shrinkage, high strength, and high wear resistance. Till date, there have been no disadvantages reported compared to the other composites. Then the packable, the filler particle is zero point 0.2 to 3 micrometer, class 1, 2, and 6 restoration. Advantages is that it has low shrinkage. However, there is decreased wear resistance. Then the flowable, which have particle size of zero point 0.6 to 3 micrometer. It is used in class 1 cervical lesions, fissure sealants, pediatric fillings. Advantage is that has a low modulus of elasticity. It is not stiff, so it can easily flow. The disadvantages are that it has high wear. Now, what are the steps to composite filling? Just a summary. Firstly, we prepare the cavity, then we etch with the phosphoric acid, 37% phosphoric acid, then we rinse with water, then we dry the cavity so we achieve the frosted enamel, then we apply the bonding agent, and then we light cure the bonding agent, and we achieve a hybrid layer. Then we apply the composite in increments, and then we light cure each increment, and then finally we polish and finish the composite filling. So we've reached the end of our lecture, and I would like to conclude by asking you that can you compare amalgam versus composites, because we've discussed both amalgam and composites. So at this stage, you should be able to know, explain and also remember the differences between amalgam and composites, their drawbacks, their advantages, and where to use which filling material.